ومن اتبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. So today, inshallah, briefly, what is the Christian Bible that we hear, especially in Christian majority countries, so much about, and who wrote them? So the Christian Bible or Gospels consists of 4 books. Books according to Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John. And today, inshallah, I will briefly talk about the first Gospel, the Gospel of Mark. For a long time, Christian scholars believed that the Gospel of Matthew was the first one. But later on, the historical critical research has proven that it is actually Mark's Gospel that predates all other Gospels. So Mark was written first. Now, why do Christians base their faith on these 4 Gospels, Mark, Matthew, Luke, and John, that were written by people other than Jesus alayhi salam? Why not believe in the Gospel of Jesus? The answer is that Jesus alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam, did not leave a Gospel. He did not dictate anything. It was all word of mouth preachings, and then he suddenly disappears from the scene. So the faithful Christians believe in these 4 Gospels because they believe that these were written by people who were either interacted with Isa alayhi salam or who lived in the time of Isa alayhi salam. Not only that, but they say 2 of them, Matthew, the tax collector, and John, son of Zebedee, were actually disciples of Isa alayhi salam. So therefore, they are writing eyewitness accounts of what happened. But what do the Christian scholars and the Western scholars of today believe, for the last 200 years believe? That they are almost unanimous in the belief that no one knows for sure who wrote the Gospel of Mark or other Gospels. These scholars argue that none of the Gospels were written by eyewitnesses to Jesus. And this is not us Muslims saying this. This is Christian historians who have used the historical critical analysis of Gospels and the time stamps and have gone back in time and reconstructed the history of Christianity saying this. So from the historical critical standpoint, the attribution to Mark originates from early Christian sources. The Gospel itself, the Gospel of Mark itself does not say that this is written by Mark, and it's not written in the first person anyway. So what do they say? They say that somebody named John Mark may have written it, and it could have been anybody named John Mark. But they emphasize that the author was likely a Greek-speaking follower writing for a non-Jewish audience, writing in Syria or Rome. So think about this. What language did Jesus speak? Aramaic or the late Syriac. So that's the language he spoke. And where did he live? He lived in the 1st century Palestine. But this gospel is written by someone who speaks Greek, so in a language other than what Jesus alayhi salam spoke, and it's written not in Jerusalem, it's written in either Rome or Syria. And it is written between 65 and 75 CE, most likely after the temple was destroyed. You see this Wailing Wall in Jerusalem next to Masjid al-Aqsa. Below that, the Jews have their scrolls and they are chanting their prayers. These, they say, that are the remnants of that temple, and Allah knows best. But this happened in the 70 CE, and the Romans completely destroyed this temple, the Jewish temple. And we know that because in this gospel, Mark references the destruction of the temple. So it's written 70 CE at least, 40 years removed from the time of Isa alayhi salam. Uniqueness of this gospel is that it is the shortest of the 4 gospels. it ends abruptly. Chapter 16 ends at verse 8, and it does not tell you about the resurrection of Jesus, which is a key point in the Christianity today, that Jesus rose from the dead on the third day, and that's when he became the Son of God, according to Paul. But this ended, it doesn't talk about anything concerning resurrection. Later on, some other scholars added more verses to make it comply with or conform to other gospels that talk about the resurrection. So now, and he also portrays a very human Jesus, not a divine Jesus, but a human Jesus. Now, an important point, and inshallah I will end at this, the Bible is a linear book. A linear book means that it starts in a chronological order. So, for example, it starts with Genesis 1:1, which is, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's how it begins. And that's how human beings write the book. There is a beginning, there is a middle, and there is an end. But compare that to the Quran. Quran is a circular book. It's not a linear book. And it follows mostly what is called the ring composition theory of the Quran, which means that the beginning and the end are very similar and they are complementing each other. And in the middle is the core message of the Quran. And whichever chapter you pick up, Quran is not arranged, the chapters of the Quran are not arranged chronologically, like beginning, middle, and end. And it reflects the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So whichever chapter you pick up, even if you don't pick up Surah Al-Fatiha or Baqarah, you pick up something in the middle, it will always guide you back to As-Sirat al-Mustaqim, the true message of Islam, the core message of Islam. So inshallah ta'ala, in the next segment, we will talk about the Gospel of Matthew, about which they say this is the most Jewish gospel. And keep in mind that Isa alayhi salam came to Bani Israel. So Mark's gospel is not that Jewish. And by design, any gospel that is written about Isa alayhi salam, it must show Isa alayhi salam in the Jewish setting, in the Bani Israel setting, where he is talking about the Torah and Injil, and he's talking about Sabbath, he's talking about the circumcision of male followers, etc. So inshallah, that is next week. Jazakumullah khair. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك